Looking this morning at the most consecutive seasons of 10-plus wins NFL all time. The Bills are now 5th, and they're the only team that has not reached a Super Bowl in that 7-year stretch. Not only is every other team, when they have these stretches, been to a Super Bowl, 6 of the 7 have won a Super Bowl. Buffalo hasn't reached it. Losing to Mahomes and Burrow, that's a reason you can't lose to Bo Nix. You can't lose to Drake May. You can't lose to Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence. You can't. Doesn't matter. You can't.
Everything's always so in the moment.
I don't like how he said Liam Cohen.
Well, here's
like,
the thing.
He almost feel like you can't lose to a guy named Liam.
Nah.
It's kind of how that sounded.
Right. All I'll say is this, not that I'm not predicting this, but you can't lose to Liam Cohen unless he rattles off 3 Super Bowls, and then that's fine. Right? Like if Trevor Lawrence all of a sudden starts winning 2 or 3. The Bills lost to the Chiefs once, and it was like, all right. Second time, it was a collapse. Third and fourth and fifth, and then because okay, it's obvious. Like they are different. You know, in the NFC, it's normal to just lose to different teams. In the AFC, it's been you're going to lose to Mahomes or Brady, and those are the only 2 teams it's okay to ever lose to. Anyway, Joe Marino joining us on the Western Hotline. Joe, good morning.
Good morning. That sound clip makes my blood boil.
Good.
We should be offended. We should be offended that the biggest names in sports media think that we're this stupid to care about that level of analysis where, I'll be honest with you, I was part of a training one time from a big company out there, and they said, you know what makes us successful is we tie everything back to the A-list players and figures in sports. And so they said, if you're going to talk about the Bills, everything has to tie back to Josh Allen. If you want to talk about pass protection, fans don't really know about pass protection. What they want to hear is that Josh Allen's running around, under pressure all the time. It's not about what the scheme is or, where the failures are. It's, how does it affect Josh Allen? If the defense isn't good, nobody cares about defense. How does that make it harder on Josh Allen? Demand more from your analysis. Listen to people like Jeremy and Joe and Locked On Bills and Cover One. You'll get a whole lot smarter and get a lot more depth to the analysis that's offered to you.
Well, thanks, Joe. It's why we have you on to talk about this stuff, talk about these matchups.
And pass protection.
And all that good stuff. And one of the things we're going to get to, we're talking to Cody Alexander of the Match Quarters. He's putting some stuff out there about the Jags defensive coordinator. And that's where I want to start with you, Joe. Like this matchup, this Jacksonville matchup, I don't love resume talk. I want to know how good they are. Forget who they beat because they've beaten some bad teams, but they've destroyed some bad teams. And their defense looks kind of nasty. So when I'll give you the choose your own adventure here. What do you want to start with? Do you want to start with the challenges the Jags defense brings, or do you worry more about the challenges the Jags offense present to this Bills defense? Which one is like more top of mind when you wake up thinking about this matchup?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jeremy. And, man, I don't even think Colin Cowherd knows who Anthony Campanelli is, the defensive coordinator for the Jaguars. All right, I'll stop on that. I do think a lot about the Bills' matchup offensively against the Jaguars' defense where, let's be honest, the Bills' offense, we can't really put much into that Jets game. The last couple games against the Browns and against the Eagles, against really good defenses, the offense had a lot of issues. Whether it was protection, missed reads, missed throws, drops, it's been problematic. And they're going up against a really good Jaguars defense that over the last 8 games has limited opposing quarterbacks to the fewest yards per attempt in the NFL. They're playing good ball. I think over the last 8 games, they have allowed, 4 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a passer rating of 66.1. I know they've played some bad quarterbacks along the way, but we are talking about an 8-game sample size. And, they're taking away the football at a high level, and I just kind of get concerned about some of those issues that we've seen from the Bills. If you're not going to go to the right place with the football, if you're not going to catch it, if you're going to have protection breakdowns, if you're going to turn it over, this is the type of team that has proven they can take advantage of those things. And so they're going to run a lot of zone, 83% zone rate. That's number 2 in the NFL, barely number 2. It's like 0.02% behind the Packers for number 1 in zone rate. And the Bills, Josh Allen's been best against zone this year, and I'm a little bit curious about that. If there is a chink in the armor with the Jaguars' pass defense, is that their pass rush is really modest. think they're 20th in sack rate, or they're 18th in sack rate and 20th in pressure rate. I think that's got to be a big advantage for the Bills. You get Josh Allen a little bit of time back there and allow routes to develop. And I don't think this is a dink-and-dunk game. This is a really good tackling Jaguars defense. I think you want to attack them in the middle of the field, intermediate range. They give up a lot of production to tight ends. The whole plan here the last half of the season was to get Dalton Kincaid optimized and healthy for the postseason. It's here. And so I think the Bills got to focus in on how they can work the ball in the intermediate, deep areas of the field, test those safeties, and get the ball to these tight ends. But their run defense is terrific, right? They haven't allowed a 75-yard rusher this year, only the third team since 2000 to do that. And, that'll be a big test. Every time we talk about good run defenses, I always say, they haven't faced the Bills, right? The Bills are the number one rush offense. They are very multiple with their scheme. James Cook's, sensational with his vision and decision-making and how he can, produce on the ground. I wish Josh Allen's legs could be a real factor in this game, because I think that's really where the Bills' run game can be different than anyone else's, when it's both Josh Allen and James Cook. I don't know how much Josh Allen can factor into that, but, that's good on good when it comes to running the ball and stopping the run. I'm looking for the Bills to find some opportunities to work the ball middle of the field, tight ends, that intermediate range.
Yeah. So, as you say that, Joe, we've watched Allen this year, and there have been times I know you've gotten, after him a little bit for not taking the easy throws and trying to force stuff down the field. Is this a game where you feel like that mindset might help him? That not to say he's going to pass up the easy ones, but that there will be opportunities in the intermediate game.
Well, yes, and really part of what fuels my thought there is they got a really good tackling slot corner in Jerry and Jones. They got two really good backers in Devin Lloyd and Foye Olakun, who are both really good in the pass game, and they both tackle. They can, got a lot of range. And so if you think you're just going to get the ball to slot receivers or running backs on these dump downs, this is the type of defense that knows how to swallow that up. They play zone, they play top down, they have good tacklers, they're athletic on the second level. I just don't feel like there's going to be a lot of success there. And so what I think you want to do is kind of challenge them to get more depth in their zone drops and fit the ball behind them, and of course have those threats that you typically do in your check down game and your quick game. But ultimately, a lot of pump fakes, then getting to second window throws. I think that Josh can maybe take advantage of exactly what you're saying there, where he has had a lot of turndowns, and allow that to turn into maybe some better opportunities down the field. I think it could work this week.
All I'm hearing is limited screens here, right? You don't expect the screen game to be heavily involved?
No, it really. And look, I'm not the biggest detractor from the screen game as a lot of people are. I think the Bills are actually a really good screen team. But I know there's some frustrating moments, especially when you look at that 2-minute end-of-game sequence against the Eagles. Like, what are we doing here with these screens and a Josh Allen game-winning drive opportunity? That was very frustrating. But, yeah, zone defense, a crazy zone defense. It's athletic and good tacklers on the second level. It's not the week for that. I think you want to try to put the ball over their head a little bit.
One more thing about the defense, like what I'm reading a little bit about this Jags defensive coordinator. I listened to your episode about this matchup, Joe, where he'd been with Miami for a while, right? As their linebackers coach. He's kind of had a little bit of I don't want to say like a meteoric rise. We'll see. Like this could be a kind of defining win for them if they do get this victory. Obviously, Miami had very little success ever stopping Josh Allen, but Campanelli at least would have lots of looks at him and lots of looks at like this offense over the years. So while it is the first matchup between the Bills and Jags and these versions of them in a while, you have some familiarity in this matchup from Anthony Campanelli going against a Josh Allen offense.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Linebackers coach, so I don't know that you can hold much against Campanelli for the success or failures of the Dolphins against the Bills. But, yeah, to your point, a lot of game planning opportunities. And I think you can look at Liam Cohen, the head coach and play caller offensively. And, the Bills played against Tampa last year, the Rams a few years ago when he was their offensive coordinator. So there's been some looks there. There's actually a lot of, interesting carryover between these two staffs, Ryan Nielsen and Joe Dana, former Jags assistants now in Buffalo. Eric Ciano, the Bills' strength and conditioning coach, he's the strength and conditioning coach for Jacksonville. Oh, by the way, they had a really healthy season outside of Travis Hunter. So funny how that goes. They also have Heath Farwell. Remember him?
Yeah.
That's their special teams coordinator. So there's some carryover between these two coaching staffs.
One more thing about just the defense, and then let Joe take over here. Another thing I read about them is that they're going to create problems with like your setting of protection. And over the course of the season, has this been, to your eye, like a problem for Josh Allen on the offensive line, is getting guys in the right space or making the right reads? I feel like I can remember a couple games later in the season where we saw improvements, where it's, which game is it? Is it Tampa? Is it Cincinnati? Is it Cleveland? Somebody rushes the left side and Dawkins takes the outside guy, allowing Allen to escape or whatever. Like setting protections. Do you feel like that has been something that has been problematic for the Bills that is vital to button up in this game?
For sure. Yeah, I don't think the Bills are very diverse with their protection schemes. And, like, in defense of the Bills, they haven't had to be. Josh Allen, 5-man protections, he figures it out. And this year that just hasn't happened as much. Whether that's been, teams even having a bigger, key in on what the Bills are trying to do protection-wise, or committing more resources to containing Josh Allen because they don't care about the weapons as much. And there's a lot that goes into it. But, the Bills' protection schemes are, they'll 5-man it up, they'll slide. They just don't have a lot of depth to it. And I think that's a concern. We've seen high leverage moments, the protection not be called correctly. And it's not, what's frustrating, it's not like a guy loses a one-on-one battle as much as it is, you slid the wrong way, or you didn't get the help in this area like you needed to, or they got a free runner, because they knew that you were going to fan a certain way. So yeah, that's an issue for the Bills. And this isn't a blitz aggressive defense. I think they're 20th in blitz rate, but so many times now in the NFL, it's not about blitzing; it's the threat of blitzing, and you get these simulated pressures. Mike McDonald, he's the toast of the league right now for defense. So it was Vic Fangio and all his disciples, and they ran this zone match coverage, and offenses figured that out. And the new flavor is Mike McDonald and simulated pressures. And simulated pressures simply means this, that you rush 4, but it's not the 4 you expect, right? So you'll put a bunch of guys kind of towards the line of scrimmage, and then 4 will rush and the rest will drop. And then, you got to sort it out quickly on the fly. Your protection scheme does. And the defenses have done a good job against the Bills using these simulated pressures. And so they're going to have to improve quickly in this game, because Campanelli is going to come with those sim pressures, play a lot of zone behind it, and set their DBs up to make plays on the ball, right? They take away the football. They make a lot of plays on the ball. And it's kind of just structurally who they are, and something the Bills are going to have to overcome this week.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Campanelli and the way they play on that side of the ball. We haven't really mentioned any individuals, but is that, Joe, because they don't really have anybody with a lot of star power, name power, whatever you want? But do you see someone, like an individual on that side of the ball, that doesn't get enough publicity, that is capable of breaking a game open himself?
Well, I think we all know the edge rushing tandem of Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker. Trayvon Walker, number 1 pick a few years ago. Josh Allen, Hines, top 10 pick that's been one of the most productive sack players in the league. So they have those guys. But really, I think the straw that stirs the drink is the linebacker duo of Devin Lloyd and Foye Oluokun, who are really smart. They have a lot of range. They're just not limited in any way. And so they can play those 2 backers and trust that whatever they need to do, they want to blitz, they want to get depth and drops, they want to play man, they need range, they need downhill ability. They can do all that stuff. And I think that really speaks to what they're able to get done. I mean, Devin Lloyd with a bunch of interceptions this year, had that huge pick 6 against the Chiefs. And they have a good slot player in Jerrion Jones. And so I think that front and the versatility that they have, guys that are playmakers that don't have a lot of limitations, opens up a lot for their defense, and makes it tough to move the ball and score points against.
On the offensive side of the ball for the Jags, Joe, they make the trade for Jacoby Myers. Sean McDermott is talking about that. A lot of people are talking about how that really changed their offense this year. To what degree do you think that is true, and how worrisome should the Bills be about playing that receiving core if they don't without Max Harrison?
Yeah, I wish the Bills had Max Harrison, because I think that's the guy that you put on Brian Thomas Jr. and feel like you can match there. And then that puts Benford on Jacoby Myers. And then really the challenge becomes the tight end, Brenton Strange, who the Bills have, shut down tight ends as good as any team in the league this year. But then that Parker Washington in the slot, and you like to think that Taron Johnson's a good matchup there. So, yeah, I do think that Harrison would be helpful this week. But I think Jacoby Myers obviously has been a huge addition. He's the most targeted player over the last 8 games pretty handily. And he's just a quality player, right? Can can win in that intermediate area of the field. He's a ball winner. He's a good route runner. He's physical. And that's where Trevor Lawrence really excels. He pushes the ball. He's a guy that I think I pulled the stats for the pod yesterday where on throws 15 yards or more down the field over the last 8 games, he's got the second most yards in the league behind Matthew Stafford. So that's where he likes to work, and that's where Jacoby Myers really excels. And then I think with his presence, it's kind of normalized things. It's allowed Parker Washington to settle in the slot. It's allowed Brian Thomas Jr. to not be the guy that they have to really get going. They can use him more in that specialized role as a vertical type player. And then, Brenton Strange is a really dynamic athlete at tight end that can win in a lot of ways. And so I think it's just kind of stabilized their weapons. And it really transitioned it early this year. That was not the plan. Their plan was Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, De'Ami Brown, who they gave like $10 million to at receiver. That guy doesn't even factor into the offense anymore. Travis Hunter's hurt, and Brian Thomas Jr. is like the 5th most targeted guy on the team over the last 8 games. So they've normalized, and I think it's allowed Trevor Lawrence to specialize in what he does best, which is working the ball in those intermediate areas and pushing the ball down the field. And of course, he's got a dual threat nature to him as well. So it's a big assignment here for the Bills defense against this Jacksonville offense.
He started to run more, right? Like the dual threat nature, it's kind of was always there, and now we're seeing him do that. Joe, with Lawrence, your 30,000-foot view of him, like what do you think about him? A top pick overall, of course, like labeled as potentially generational, and it feels like he might need this win to be taken seriously, right? Like it's a Bills defense that is good against the pass, and if they're going to push the ball down the field with the weapons he has, like there's no doubt the weapons he has are good enough, and it just whatever. It feels like a spot for him to kind of place his flag that I'm a player in this conference.
I'll resist the Colin Cowherd rant right here, but I think there is some truth to that. He's played at a really high level over the last 8 games, and he's eliminated a lot of the warts. So when you ask me what do I think of Trevor Lawrence, obviously I think he's really talented. Size, athleticism, arm talent is all there. But it felt like for a while he just couldn't get out of his own way. Whether that was like really costly fumbles, missed throws in big moments.
They've had drop issues there for a long time too, right?
Drops have been a 3-year problem for the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Like every year he leads the league in air yards dropped and drop rate. That's been an issue. But I also want, when it's that consistent, you do wonder about the quarterback a little bit. Does he play with enough timing? Is he accurate with consistency? Right. I think that there's a little bit of a quarterback component to consistent drop rates. And so I just saw a talented player that never really stabilized. And I think over the last 8 games, he really has. And they had that game overseas where, you just kind of felt like, there it is. There's all the warts of Trevor Lawrence. And it might have been his Josh Allen Patriots game where, Josh, was it 3 or 4 turnovers, gets concussed, can't finish the game. The Bills lose by like 6. And then the Bills also had a punt block for a touchdown. You're like, my goodness, dude, if you just don't do all that stuff, you're going to be able to win even when you don't play well. And I think that might have been a moment for them in addition to kind of stabilizing their weapons. And look, Liam Cohen's a good coach. I mean, he got great play out of Will Levis. He got great play out of Baker Mayfield. He got great play out of Trevor Lawrence, kind of the best we've ever seen of those players. And so I think it's a good marriage. But, yeah, I think for Trevor to truly say, yeah, I'm a big-time guy that's going to go in and win playoff games and, I'm not just a product of things. I'm a dude. Yeah, I think this would be huge for his legacy. He's also 26 years old, so There's a lot of Trevor Lawrence to come.
Yeah, I mean, ability is one thing, and legacies and QB wins and post like this is where narratives get built. It's just for better or for worse, you got to get the wins in order to get the legacy. That's how football works these days.
Yeah. Last thing, Joe, quickly, because the Bills' run defense gets a lot of talk about, like, is that going to be the thing that sinks them in this postseason? For this team, Travis Etienne had 1,100 yards, but maybe wasn't the most efficient thing in the world. Like, how much would you expect the Bills to get run on or stop the run in this game?
Well, I don't think you show up in this game and feel like, Jacksonville is going to be the team that really exposes issues that you have defending the run. I think they've been probably a little bit of a below-average rushing outfit. And, maybe that's one of their biggest questions is, can that be something that they can lean on here late in the season when, a lot of these postseason games are, can you run the ball? Can you stop the run? Is that something that they can lean on? And I think it's a fine rushing offense. I don't think it's something that, you're overly afraid of having to play. It's potent. I think they have an athletic offensive line. I don't necessarily look at it as a super physical offensive line. And so, I think the Bills will have their shaky moments like they typically do defending the run, but I don't expect this to be a game that the Bills just get run on all over, and it becomes a frustrating afternoon because of that.
Joe Marino, the Locked On Bills podcast. Joe, always a pleasure. Thanks. The pick is, you making a pick here? You ready for it?
Are you saying I'm not picking against the Bills?
All right.
And the playoffs?
Never know. Joe,
yeah.
Sneaky Joe here he's nervous. He's
I
worried.
did it on Monday and Tuesday. I haven't said yet what I feel like on Wednesday.
That's it.
Just saying.
Yeah,
I think
by Friday, I'm going to feel okay.
This team makes you feel nervous every week.
Right.
I think I texted you this week, Jeremy. I'm like, I can tell you all about the Jaguars. I think I have them figured out. It's the Bills. The Bills are the team I don't have figured out.
Right.
Who knows what shows up, but I'm not going to pick against them.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Always a pleasure. We'll talk next week.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. Joe Marino, Locked On Bills podcast, joining us on the Western Hotline.